It all started innocently enough. I moved into a small old house on the outskirts of the city. There was a certain charm to it, with its creaky floorboards and antique furniture. The first time I saw him was a week after moving in. At night I woke up from a quiet whisper. I realized that I was alone at home, and only I could make sounds. As if not so. I opened my eyes and immediately screamed like a little girl. At my feet I saw the silhouette of a child who was standing and just looking at me. I've never felt such fear. I jumped out of bed. But he hasn't disappeared anywhere. He looked to be about 8 or 9 years old. He had a fragile build and pale, translucent skin. His facial features were delicate, but there was a maturity in his eyes that belied his age. Eyes devoid of any childlike innocence. His face was ashen pale, his lips thin and pale, curved in an eternal, chilling grin, and when he spoke, his voice was a whisper, a hollow echo that seemed to come from far away, from beyond the world of the living. He just looked at me and smiled. He was dressed in old-fashioned clothes, as if transferred from another era. A worn, dusty suit hung loosely on his small body. The most discouraging aspect of his appearance was his hands. They were thin and pale, almost translucent, and when they reached out to me, I could see the faintest hint of blue veins running under the surface of the skin. He was a child who should not have existed, a manifestation of fear as he is. I just stood there, scared and cornered. It took only a few seconds, and suddenly he spoke. I remembered his voice for the rest of my life. At first I didn't understand what he was saying. His voice was quiet, but like a whisper. I took a few steps around the room, hoping to take something heavy in my hands and get closer to the door. But in the dark, I only found the TV remote control. He just stood there and whispered something. He looked me straight in the eye, followed me. His eyes were filled with anger. Suddenly he began to whisper louder. I still couldn't make out what he was saying, but to be honest, I wasn't really trying. There was only one thing in my head to run. I only had the TV remote in my hands, and I decided to use it. I threw the remote with all my might, hoping that it would distract him. The remote flew through him and crashed against the wall. The whispers grew louder. He started to approach me. I just stood there and couldn't move. He came almost in close. His face was right in front of my face. I rushed to the exit. I don't know how, but I managed to run out of the room, and while I was running up the stairs, I was finally able to hear exactly what the voice was saying. He was saying, "I've come for you. I've come for you." I didn't understand what it meant, and just kept running out through the living room to the door. I tripped over a log sticking out of the fireplace. A log fell on the carpet. I understood that the house could burn down, but I didn't care anymore. There was only one thought in my head. If I get out of this damn house, I will never cross its threshold again. The whisper turned into a scream. He repeated the same thing. "I came for you." Running up to the door, I pulled the handle and it opened. I don't know why, but I turned around. The boy's figure was slowly descending the steps without touching the floor. He was still looking into my eyes and shouting. Running out into the street, I ran across the road and stopped to catch my breath. No one was chasing me anymore. I was gasping for air like the last time. My house was already on fire. I was standing in front of my burning house, and a silhouette was visible in the window that scared the shit out of me. My name is Jim. It happened when I was 9, I think. Yes, exactly 9. My mom decided that it was time for me to visit a new dentist for a routine dental examination. She has heard a lot about a famous dentist named Dr. Grimshaw, who recently moved to our city. She called the dentist and made an appointment for me. Dentistry was not far from our house. It was an ordinary looking clinic, there's not much to tell. There was silence in the waiting room, except for distant screams coming from the clinic. Mom said that the kids were alarmists, and that everything would be fine. But somehow I felt uneasy. I, like any other child, was afraid to go to the dentist. We sat on chairs at the door of the office waiting for the doctor. After 2 or 3 minutes, the door creaked open and Dr. Grimshaw appeared on the threshold. At first it seemed to me that everything was fine. I got up and was about to enter the office, but then my gaze fell on his robe. He was covered in blood, and his sleeves were torn. I was really very scared. Taking another step towards the office, I saw a dental chair inside. There was a huge pool of blood under it. I froze in place. Suddenly the doctor took my hand and told me to go with him. In the doctor's second hand I saw an object very similar to pliers. They really were pliers. I wouldn't have gone into that office in any case. I screamed and looked at my mom. She was sitting on a chair and looking at something on the phone. I screamed but she didn't pay attention. The doctor tried to pull me into the office more and more. I looked at the nurses who were walking along the corridors. It was as if they knew what was going on, but they couldn't help. I called for help, but no one dared to help. I was a child, and I didn't have the strength to escape from the doctor's hands, so I bit him. I clenched my teeth as hard as I could. Oh, and a miracle. Ego's hand loosened. Without looking back, I ran out into the street. Half a minute later, my mother ran out after me. And the first thing she said was, "It's not nice of you, Jimmy."